Welcome, everybody, to How to Let Go of a Narcissist, where we explore the healing journeys and tools that help survivors of narcissistic abuse reclaim their power. I'm your host, Marv Curtis, and today I'm honored to welcome Curtis as our guest. And he's here to share some insights that might help you on your path. So, Curtis, welcome. Nice to have you here.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
Can you share a little bit about yourself and what led you to this point in your healing journey?
Yeah, certainly. I have come to realize that over the last 15 years, or let's say 14 years of my life, I have went from a higher level of being to a sad, lost, anxious, so on and so on person who can't function like I used to, and I couldn't understand why. And after doing some research and looking into a lot of different parts and pieces of it all, and accidentally finding out about narcissism, I've come to realize that I've been in a narcissistic abusive relationship here this whole time, and which was a lightning because it answered some of those questions that those wonders of why am I here like this? What's going on? Why is this happening this way? But through the journey of realizing this, I've also learned that there's no fixing the situation. So I've had to come to terms with leaving the situation to better myself, which involves leaving, not having a 24/7 with my sons, and that's been the hardest part, and that's probably me around or in it more than anything, is not wanting to leave them, so to speak. And there's some history on that with my daughters from my first marriage, similar situation. And I got away from her, but I lost my daughters in the process. And I was avoiding that to the end with my sons. And I've been challenging, trying to work through the challenges of that, keeping them in my life without dealing with narcissistic abuse. And it's challenging. So always.
That is the toughest problem, navigating those kids.
Yes. The co-parenting is almost not even a term that I could use in my situation.
Yeah. Well, perhaps we'll get into that a little bit more as we go along. But before we do that, tell me a little bit more about the previous experiences with narcissism that you've had going back, certainly your previous marriage and perhaps anything before that, neglect maybe.
Sure. By the way, before I learned about narcissism, approximately 2 years ago or so, before that, I didn't have these answers. I didn't understand what I know now. I kind of put the pieces together of my previous life, so to speak, my past, and some of those instances based on what I've learned since I've learned about narcissistic abuse. So I'm to realize that my first high school sweetheart, where I was in a narcissistic abusive relationship with her. Not at first, of course, there was a little bombing, everything was great. But then later on, when things got tough, and you know, when I decided that I had to leave her to be healthy, she in turn were bad mouthing my daughters about me to them, and I lost my relationship with my daughters, but didn't know that, didn't know why. I knew that I lost the relationship, but I didn't understand why, because I wasn't doing anything to cause that. So anyways, so later on, now I have a relationship with my daughters, and we've cleared all that, and come to find out, the narcissistic abuse check boxes were going on with that. And since then, I've also learned that a lot of times people like me attract people like them, and so I've seen it a few times. Another relationship I was in, it was very up and down, and when it was good, it was great, and when it was bad, it was unbearable, and I couldn't understand why it could ever get to that level. And when I look back, of course, I realized that um, it was like a narcissistic abuse situation that I was in. So I've been there. Now I know about it. I hopefully will learn from this and never be in this position again in the future.
So you said people like me.
Yeah.
What does that mean?
I guess I could label it as the empath type. I've always been overly caring about other people, very in tune with myself, and very outgoing and structured. And I was in the military for 15 years, and I was very, very on point. I took care of anything when it was needed to be taken care of. Very organized, um, successful as far as in my own mind, outgoing as far as friends and circles of um, support systems, whether it was family and friends. I felt very planted, very throughout my life, and I think that was what attracted to the people I've been with, is that because they were kind of, when I found out after the fact, was that they were kind of lost, and they were kind of wondering, and they were kind of not sure about how their emotions worked, and it just seemed like they were up and down, sort of hot cold, and they were using me as their crutch. And this is just a perspective. I'm not a doctor to diagnose this, but it seemed like they were using me as their way through life, and abusing me at the same time by treating me bad because they could. So
Yeah, kind of opportunistic.
yeah, I put up with it because I want I saw the best in them.
Yeah. Wow. And so what was the specific moment where you kind of realized, I got to get out of this, that led you to go out and start searching and eventually find out about narcissism? What happened to you?
I was working in a very, very extremely stressful position around the beginning of COVID. So 2020, 21, got a new job that was supposed to be one way, and it turned out to be extremely on the other side as far as stress and responsibility and lack of support to help me get there. So I was a lead, and I couldn't concentrate, and I couldn't focus, and I couldn't drive forward like I had in my entire life, and I was losing touch of myself. So I'd come home at night, and I would sit on my bed, and I would think about what uh, I don't even know what I was thinking about. One time I was driving down the freeway. It got to an intersection in the freeways, and I didn't know where I was. I didn't know where I was going. I had like a moment of blank. And I decided, hey, I need to go talk to a counselor. So I went to a counselor, and I had one session, and I explained all this stuff. And she said, it sounds like you have burnout. And so I looked up burnout, and I'm like, well, some of this fits, some of it doesn't. And so um, then I accidentally clicked on a couple of other things, and I searched out how I was being treated at home. When I came home, I said, hey, I figured out what's wrong with me, and I'm going to fix it. I'm burned out. I need to do this, this, and this, and this. And the person that I'm with, or was, the narcissistic user, who happens to be the mother of my children, was not happy for me. She was like, oh, well, that's probably not going to work out, or it's stupid, or she was very against it. And I was like, wait a minute. I just had a epiphany about what's wrong with me. This person is not happy for me. This is that was just like a time that I remember clicking, and I'm like, oh, I need to do something about this. I started looking up this situation, realized that she checked all the boxes for narcissistic abusing. I was going through all these abusing type situations, myself, and I decided to search out a coach to try and get me out of the situation. And that person helped me understand where I was, why I was there, and how to get out of it. And then financially, I'm now kind of still here. So, but anyways, it was that moment when I had that, um, uh, uh, I understood what was going on, even though it turned out it wasn't burnout as much as it was narcissistic abuse. But at the time, I was so relieved that, I was going to be able to fix this issue. And I came home thinking I was going to get, that support from my, and it was like a punch in the face. So, do this.
Yeah. Big red flag.
I'm like, wait a minute, here's the problem right here. It's not my job. It's the other stuff. So,
This kind of was a red flag for you. Had you had other, I mean, you're very sensitive, you're intuitive.
mhm.
Had you had other red flags or kind of internal body messages saying something not right here?
Oh yes, many times, many times. Unfortunately, many times. I hate to say that. It's almost embarrassing that I'd seen them and didn't, react to them. I mean, I just let them go. For example, I always was the one saying I was sorry in order to resolve the argument. And I remember stating this many times. I'm like telling her, why am I the one apologizing to you in order for us to stop fighting when I was the victim and I didn't do anything wrong? I couldn't understand it. And of course, it was always my fault, always my fault, always my fault. And I kept trying to change me. I gave 100%, but I got 50 back, and those kind of things. And I noticed that she was very into my hobbies later on. She wanted nothing to do with them. And I'm like, and she was like, well, you can't do that stuff anymore because you're going to have kids. And I'm like, well, what? She was just like sucking the life out of me little bit by little bit. Um, I would want to invite friends over, and she said she didn't want to clean the house. Um, you know, so I stopped hanging out with my friends. There was a lot of red flags like that.
Yeah.
I just kind of put up with it because I was in it for the long haul, and I was going to make this work, and I was going to raise my family as a whole. So it wasn't going to, this was it. This was my twilight, and I was going to finish out my life with my family intact, and I was going to make that happen at my expense. It turns out that way.
As it turns out. So, what was one strategy or tool that you used that made the biggest difference in transitioning out of the old life and into what is now your new life?
Um, I don't know if it's the right word, but the epiphany of it, the realization, I don't know if that was a little bit of YouTube in combination with some books that I read, in combination with some counseling that I got. And it just kind of all started coming together um, around 2 years ago, 3 years ago. And then when I was like, how do I get out of this? Because I don't want to leave my kids. How do I get away from her? How do I fix this problem? I
Hmm.
went to their coach, the narcissistic abusive coach, and she helped me understand all that. So that was kind of like the turning point between feeling emotionally stuck and emotionally being able to walk away from, well, I guess, the situation, and accept not having my kids with me all the time, having a part-time relationship with my kids. When I say that, co-parenting.
Very tough choice.
Yeah. So
Okay.
I think that was it. That one.
How do you keep moving forward when things are tough like that?
My kids. I have to say, I thought about this because I knew we were going to be meeting, and I'm like, what is making me drive? And it's my two boys. They're my life. Everything I do is about them. Every penny I spend is mostly towards their beings, their sports, their activities, their whatever. Um, I don't go to the bar. I don't go race motorcycles anymore. I go to my kids' basketball games or their sports events, or I stay home at night and work on their derby cars for their Pinewood Derby for Cub Scouts, and that's my life. And if it wasn't for them, uh, uh, well, it's kind of an odd situation because if it wasn't for them, I wouldn't be here. I would have got away,
Suffering.
right? So they're keeping me in the situation, the bad situation, but they're also helping me through it by making me have to be strong and in tune with what I need to be a good dad. And that's a challenge. It really is. It's a challenge to be a good dad. And when I say good dad, I mean like the perfect dad without the emotional stuff that comes with being in my situation. I've been abused for so long that I'm going through the challenges of dealing with all those check boxes as well. So trying to separate that from my kids, I look at them and I'm like, oh, I'm gonna treat them differently than I feel. Like even I'm gonna be happy with them. That's a challenge.
It's a tightrope.
Yes.
So if you could go back and give yourself one piece of advice, however far back you want to go, how far back would you go? And what's the one piece of advice you'd give yourself?
I don't know if there's an exact time or a moment, but I would say the red flags. If I was somebody giving me advice, I would say, hey, are you sure you want to deal with that the rest of your life? You want to be the one that's always at fault? Do you want to always go and do your hobbies by yourself instead of having your spouse with you, supporting you? Those things, realizing the red flags, and the thing is, I was so dedicated, so it was hard for me not to go with the red, ignore the red flags because they were red flags, but they weren't as important as what I was getting in return. So, just that period of time between the love bomb and when she started discarding discarding me and not caring, not being understanding, not having being empathetic to anything, yelling at me in my face, like, and then acting like nothing was wrong. 15 minutes later, wanting to know why I wasn't making her dinner after she just got done screaming at me about something. It just, those red flags were, I didn't understand it till now, but I know now I would have ran, I would have allowed it.
Yeah. So if there's one person who's listening right now who really resonates with the experience you're having, maybe not a little as far down the road as you are, what's the one message you'd give them?
I would say stay as strong as you can and understand that it's not you. You are not the problem. You are not the reason you are where you are. You are not, you are good and you're worthy and you matter. You matter. You matter to but something somewhere you matter. No matter how much they tear you down, you matter. And to get help with that, don't try and do it on your own. I tried to struggle through this on my own, and when I did seek counseling, she would if it was group counseling, I would she would manipulate it. She would be the victim, but then when the counseling was over, she was the attacker, and I'm like, so the help, you got to get individual help. Marriage or couples counseling is great, but you got to get away from that because a lot of times they manipulate that. So get individual help. Know that you're worthy and you're important and you're going to be okay.
Great advice. Very, very challenging. Well, this has been inspirational. Thank you. And for those of you who are listening, if this resonates with you and you'd like to be able to tell your story, reach out to me. I'm at marvcurtiscoaching.com. Love to get you on board. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much.